Hello, my name is Tivoli Walker. I'm with the California Health Collaborative. I am the STAND Community Engagement Coordinator. STAND stands for Small Town Allies Against Nicotine Dependency. Today I'm going to be talking to you about e-cigarettes and pod-based systems, big tobacco, and your health. Most of these slides and information are from the Stanford University Tobacco Toolkit. Many of you have probably heard about e-cigarettes, specifically pod-based e-cigarettes like Juul, Puff Bar, Fix, Smoke, Enjoy, Vuse, and Sorin. They have grown in popularity, but many users may wrongly believe these are harmless devices. E-cigarettes are made of a battery, an atomizer with a heating coil, and an absorbent material that absorbs a liquid that can contain nicotine, flavoring, and chemicals. The battery allows the atomizer to heat the liquid, called e-juice, which creates an aerosol that is breathed into the lungs and breathed out into the air repeatedly. Some of these devices are preloaded with e-juice and some require the user to add it. The original e-cigarettes vape pens looked like a cigarette, came preloaded, and were disposable. Later, e-cigarettes and vape pens looked either like pens or contained more bulky battery boxes known as mods. Pod-based e-cigarettes are a current type of e-cigarette. They are usually made up of two components. The part on the left is the power source and contains the battery and can be charged through a USB port. The smaller piece on the right is the pod or cartridge. The cartridge from Juul is reported to produce 200 puffs of aerosol and used to come in a variety of different flavored e-juices, all with an alarming amount of nicotine. These flavors and cartridge colors are concerning since they attract young people. Each Juul pod is packed with 41.3 milligrams of nicotine, which is equal to the amount of nicotine the body can take in from smoking up to 1.5 to 2 packs of cigarettes. A fixed pod contains almost twice that amount of about 75 milligrams. A pod holds its e-juice in the outer shell. When plugged into the battery piece, the e-juice is heated to produce an aerosol, which is invasive to your lungs. Our biggest concern with pod-based e-cigarettes, especially among young people, is that they can deliver up to the same amount of nicotine released from 1.5 to 3.5 packs of cigarettes. All salt-based e-juice liquid contains nicotine. Although some e-juices may not contain nicotine, all salt-based e-juices contain nicotine. For example, Juul Pods, Puff Bars, which are extremely popular now, and Eon Sticks contain salt-based nicotine. Products with salt-based nicotine can allow for more frequent use, increasing their potential for addiction because it feels less harsh on the throat. Each product with salt-based nicotine can each Juul pod contains 41.3 milligrams of nicotine, which is extremely high compared to other tobacco and nicotine products. A Puff Bar holds even more nicotine, 50 milligrams that is, while an Eon Stick is loaded with 68 milligrams of nicotine. If you aerosolize the same amount of e-juice, but with the most concentrated free-base nicotine, it'll equal to 25 milligrams of nicotine. Juul Pods, Puff Bars, and Eon Sticks are disposable and not made to be refilled. Unlike other e-cigarette vape devices, this further contributes to plastic and toxic pollutions in the environment, which are public health concerns. The throat hit or irritation on the throat is the body's way of saying, hey, this air does not feel normal on my throat. I should not be breathing this in. Cigarette users become tolerant of this feeling over time, even associated with receiving a hit of nicotine. Juul Labs claim that it designed the Juul for adults who wanted to quit smoking cigarettes. If that's the case, wouldn't they have wanted their device to irritate the throat, since smokers associate it with bringing nicotine into their body? Let's just say they were interested in attracting new non-smoker consumers, aka young people. They simply studied how cigarette companies spent decades manipulating nicotine to maintain addiction. Juul's nicotine salt formula mimics the nicotine salt additives developed by R.J. Reynolds, creators of Newport and Camel. In other words, this reduced harshness on the throat has allowed Juul to deliver more nicotine to young people without their bodies rejecting it as easily. The flavors also make it seem friendly. to young people, and the attractive design can make it seem non-threatening. For those who haven't inhaled an aerosol with nicotine salt, let's look at an analogy to wrap your head around this. Let's say you picked up a soda that had way more sugar than you wanted. You would most likely be turned off by its extreme sweetness. Well, let's say the soda companies manipulated the soda liquid so when you had the same sugary drink, you wouldn't feel any of those sensations. They would have succeeded in bypassing your body's alarm system, just like Juul and other pod-based companies have done with nicotine salts. For so many years, consumers were told that the clouds made by e-cigarette vape pens was just water vapor. Do you think that's true? Nope. E-cigarettes or vape pens allow the user to make large clouds that many think are water vapor. In reality, the cloud is a mixture of many different chemicals that were either present in the e-liquid before or produced during the heating process. A vapor is a chemical that has evaporated. An aerosol is a mixture of liquid particles suspended in a gas and can contain many chemicals. Instead of just mixing with the air like pure gas, aerosols can leave drops behind. Here's a list of chemicals found in regular cigarettes. How many of these chemicals do you think are found in e-cigarettes or pod-based aerosols? All of these chemicals have been found in e-cigarette or pod-based aerosol. The ones in orange are known to be harmful, determined by the government, the FDA to be specific. And while we did not know this at first, many of these are the same chemicals found in traditional cigarettes. Simply put, e-cigarettes produce an aerosol that often contains many harmful chemicals and toxins, some known to cause cancer. Nicotine itself is a highly addictive compound. And while not all contain nicotine, all have many of these chemicals and toxins. Based on what we know about e-juice liquid, what chemicals would you specifically find in these pods? Let's look at the ingredients that Juul Lab reported to be in a Juul pod. Nicotine, the addictive chemical in all pods. Benzoic acid pairs up with nicotine to help deliver high amounts of nicotine to the brain. Glycerol and propylene glycol, common ingredients found in most e-juices. Propylene glycol is not approved by the government for inhaling. The other chemicals include natural oils, extracts, and flavors. What do they mean by extracts and flavors? What else is in this? Well, scientists started to look at all the chemicals in the Juul pod e-juice. Guess what they found? 59 chemicals when they looked at all the pod flavors. Why wouldn't they want us to know this? Maybe this will help you answer the question. The names in red represent chemicals that are corrosive, irritants, harmful, toxic, and dangerous to the environment. What you see in orange are chemicals that are harmful, and those in light blue represent chemicals that are irritants. Recently, a Harvard University study found that a toxin named glucan was found in Juul pods. Glucan is commonly found in the outer layer of fungi or fungus. Glucan is known for causing inflammation of airways in the lungs, which can lead to a long-term lung disease. Secondhand aerosol, similar to secondhand smoke, is the plume of chemicals released into the environment directly from the e-cigarette pod-based device from the lung to the user, from the lung of the user. Common places for exposure to secondhand aerosol include restaurants, parks, vehicles, and designated smoking areas. Chemicals that are released include harmful substances such as nicotine, heavy metals, ultrafine particles that fall deep into the lungs, cancerous chemicals, and volatile organic compounds, also known as VOCs. Exposure can lead to cancer, respiratory infections, and make someone's asthma worse, among other problems. Another way e-cigarette vape pens pose a danger to people other than the user is through third-hand aerosol. Third-hand aerosol is the mixture of chemicals in an e-cigarette vape pen aerosol that remains on surfaces and in dust, even after the aerosol is gone, and react with other chemicals in the environment to form toxic chemicals. These potentially harmful chemicals can be exposed to other people or animals through the respiratory system, through ingestions, and through skin exposure. Small children are especially at risk for third-hand aerosol exposure because they tend to put things into their mouth and they have more vulnerable skin. The two most common ways the e-cigarette industry represents the amount of nicotine in e-juice is in milligrams per milliliter or percentage of nicotine by weight. The labeling of nicotine content is inconsistent, sometimes represented in milligrams or milliliters, and sometimes they may not be labeled at all. See how confusing this is? Well, how might your confusion benefit the e-cigarette community industry? A higher value means there is more nicotine, but 5% on these boxes is misleading. 5% is a small number and it just says 5% strength. 5% strength of what? Exactly how much is 5%? Wouldn't this marketing strategy of using 5% strength on the packaging manipulate and mislead you to think that it is safe? Remember, a Juul pod contains 41.3 milligrams of nicotine. Using a smaller number like 5 instead of 41.3 milligrams once again downplays the amount of nicotine present. If you don't know, a standard pack of cigarettes contains 20 cigarettes. There is 1 milligram of nicotine absorption per cigarette, so about 20 milligrams of nicotine delivered to the body from a whole pack of cigarettes. Unlike other e-juice, which may or may not contain nicotine, all salt-based e-juice contains nicotine. According to Juul Labs, 1 Juul pod contains 41.3 milligrams of nicotine. This is equal to the amount of nicotine you'll find in about 40 cigarettes, or about 2 packs. As mentioned before, this is a high amount of nicotine and can be intense for the first-time user. 1 puff bar contains 50 milligrams of nicotine, which is equivalent to 50 cigarettes or about 2.5 packs. 1 Surin Vegan cartridge contains up to 90 milligrams of nicotine or cigarettes, which is about 4.5 packs. No matter what pod device you are using, all of them contain high levels of nicotine, which is extremely addictive, which keeps you coming back for more. In order to understand how nicotine is so good at creating addiction, we must know how it takes advantage of our brains. Nicotine mimics a chemical that our brain produces naturally and easily binds to receptors in the brain that are made for that chemical. When those receptors get filled, it sets off a chain reaction that leads the brain to feel pleasure. Pleasure is necessary for survival because it encourages us to do activities that keep us alive, like eating, sleeping, and building relationships. However, no matter what kind of device it comes from, nicotine hijacks this pleasure pathway and tricks the brain into interpreting the chemical signs as pleasurable and necessary for survival. Continuing to use nicotine in any form will result in addiction. This means that nicotine turns your brain against you so that you feel forced to keep using nicotine just to feel normal. One way to think about nicotine is like termites coming into your home. Your home is a structure that is already built and functions as a shelter for you to live in. Termites come in and take advantage of this structure, turning the protective shelter into food for their colony. Keep in mind, this effect is no accident. Companies specifically design their products to deliver a high level of nicotine to their users, just like Big Tobacco did with cigarettes. Nicotine doesn't just have an effect on your brain, since there are acetylcholine receptors all over your body. For example, using nicotine can make your heart beat faster because it activates your fight or flight response. Nicotine salts, e-liquids, produce a faster heart rate than other non-nicotine salt e-liquids. Outside of all the chemicals and toxins already in pod-based e-cigarettes, nicotine can independently cause trouble breathing and damage to the lungs. Nicotine can also cause increased acid reflux. Last but not least, nicotine can negatively impact your reproductive organs. Along with the harms from nicotine on its own, we know there are other health risks from these products. The e-cigarette aerosol enters the lungs and leaves chemical residue behind. The lungs cannot break down these chemicals, so they damage air pathway and air sacs that bring oxygen into the body. Over time, this can increase the risk of lung disease. Aerosol has also been shown to damage specific parts of your circulatory system or blood network, increasing your risk of heart disease. Ear, eye, and throat irritation is common among e-cigarette vape pen users. Scientists are still studying how these aerosol chemicals impact the brain. We are only beginning to understand the long-term health effects of using e-cigarettes. It took over 25 years to see the long-term health impact from smoking tobacco cigarettes because the damage done on the body isn't always noticeable right away. Every chemical found in an e-cigarette aerosol has not been studied in detail yet. Researchers have identified harmful substances in the aerosol, some even known to cause cancer. We wish we could tell you all the ways that e-cigarettes are harmful, but the truth is we can't. Since they are new and researchers can't fast forward into the future, all of the long-term consequences of these products are impossible to predict. A recent study on e-cigarettes found that using them raises someone's risk of developing a long-term lung disease. This means someone using e-cigarettes for a few years could develop bronchitis, which is inflammation and irritation of major airways in your body. These airways are responsible for exchanging air in and out of your lungs. Emphysema can also be developed over time from using e-cigarettes. Emphysema is the destruction of air sacs in the lungs, which is a common disease that long-term cigarette smokers develop. Alveoli and the air sacs in your lungs are the place in the body where fresh oxygen is delivered and carbon dioxide is removed. Other lung diseases linked to e-cigarette use include asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Those who use both e-cigarettes and cigarettes are at an even higher risk of developing a lung disease and or a heart disease compared to someone only using e-cigarettes or cigarettes. Damaging the lung tissue could lead to a chain reaction of other health complications. Less oxygen will be sent to the brain, which means less oxygen to the organs and tissue in the body. Other studies have confirmed that e-cigarette use weakens the lung's immune response to infection, making it harder for lungs to fight off harmful viruses and bacteria. Overall, smoking or vaping increases someone's risk for COVID-19. This is because the immune system is suppressed, making the lungs less ready to fight a COVID-19 infection. The lung produces more of the ACE2 receptor protein, which acts as a doorway for the virus. Those who reported smoking and were hospitalized due to pneumonia from COVID-19 were less likely to recover. The risk of transmitting the virus is greater since fingers are in contact with lips from holding a nicotine product. The risk of transmitting the virus is greater if sharing a nicotine product such as a water pipe or hookah. The evidence that e-cigarettes, including products like Juul, increases cardiovascular or heart risk is piling up. The heart is the center of pumping blood throughout a complex network of blood vessels in the body. These blood vessels are responsible for delivering fresh oxygen to organs or tissues. Your cells need oxygen to survive and work properly. Scientists have discovered that e-cigarette aerosol from using or breathing in secondhand aerosol can impair the function of blood vessels and make them stiff. This stiffness can decrease blood flow throughout the body and lead to blood clotting. Breathing in the aerosol from the e-cigarette, even if you aren't the one using it, can lead to blood vessel stiffness and possibly affect your heart's ability to move fresh oxygen to your brain, muscles, liver, and other parts of your body. Ultimately, blood vessel stiffness and blood clotting can increase someone's risk for heart attack or heart disease. On the bright side, this works the other way too. The risk of having a heart attack can drop immediately after quitting cigarettes. It could also go down after quitting e-cigarettes. Someone could take action right away to protect their heart by stopping any e-cigarette or cigarette use. If we take apart these devices, it's important to consider how each component will impact a young person's health. The plastic mouthpiece is coming in direct contact with the mouth. Heavy metal parts are being heated up and degrading over time, and cartridges are being disposed of in the environment. This raises concerns and the question of how do all these parts affect your body and your community? Jewel pods, for example, are single-use plastic pods, like plastic straws. They take many years to break down and ultimately create more waste. Because pod-based e-cigarettes can leak heavy metals and residual nicotine, they are considered to be a biohazard waste and e-waste. We share this concern for all pod-based e-cigarettes. There are many reasons why young people start using these devices, such as flavors, changing social norms, life stressors, perceived reduced risk, marketing, and lack of education. The industry is smart in their approach and focuses on these 3 points: flavors, changing social norms, and marketing, to push their agenda and attract young consumers. The e-cigarette vape pen industry knows that many of their customers are getting older and need to be replaced with new customers so they can make more profits. What do you think? Who do you think they see as the ideal customer? Earlier, we discussed how pod-based companies have fruity and sweet flavored pods along with colors. It's important to be aware that this is another example of the pod-based companies following well-known advertising strategies from Big Tobacco's playbook. They know the flavors are a great way to attract young customers because they are the group most interested in sweet flavors and bright colors. This tactic is so effective that flavored cigarettes have been banned since 2009, since extensive research shows that they are more appealing to young people. More and more evidence is piling, proving that these flavors are dangerous in and of themselves. So far, we know that flavors can impair lung function and increase risk for heart disease, but pod-based companies continue to use them because they know it makes their products seem appealing and safe to teens. SB 793 is a landmark bill signed into law that will save the lives of Californians, especially the lives of kids in the African American Black community from the tobacco industry's deadly products. SB 793 goes into effect January 1st, 2021, and ends the sales of most flavored tobacco products in stores, including vapes and menthol cigarettes. Tobacco retailers are responsible for complying with the law. It is not a crime for individuals to purchase, use, or possess flavored tobacco products for personal use, and they may not be penalized. As a result of the tobacco industry's predatory targeting among African Americans who smoke in California, 70% use menthol cigarettes, compared to 18% of white adults who smoke. Many other communities, such as the LGBTQ community, will be protected from the predatory tobacco industry's flavored products. As a result of tobacco industry's targeting, nearly half of the LGBT adults who smoke in California use menthol cigarettes, compared to only 28% of straight adults who smoke. More than half, 54%, of youth ages 12 to 17 years who smoke cigarettes use menthol cigarettes. SB 793 protects African American Black Californians' lives by not criminalizing menthol cigarette users and corrects the fatal flaw made in a 2009 Federal Tobacco Control Act that got rid of flavored cigarettes but allowed menthol cigarettes to continue to be marketed and sold. Quitting smoking or vaping is the best thing you can do for your health, especially with COVID-19 circulating and flu season approaching. If you want to quit or know someone who wants to quit, the California Smokers Helpline is there to help. They are currently offering free nicotine patches and a 2-week starter kit while supplies last. So don't hesitate to call 1-844-8-NO-VAPE. And that is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions or would like any materials, I can be reached at email or by phone. If you would like to be entered in the raffle, go ahead and take the quiz and submit the information at the end. And if you have a professor who is offering extra credit, I will forward your information that you have watched and completed the quiz to your professor. So please insert that information at the end of the quiz. Thank you for your time and have a great day.